Hi there, Chris here with another fresh tip for you all. In this video, we are going to take a look at painting some Battletech models from the core box game that was recently came out. This video, we're going to concentrate on applying Citadel colors. To get us started, we're going to use some Basilicum Gray with a drop of contrast medium. Simply just slap a little bit onto my palette. I take about 2 drops and then 1 drop of medium. Give it a thorough mixing until I don't see any kind of little marbling or anything like that in it. And then begin generously applying it to the model surface. Now, I don't want it to pool up too heavily in any areas, so I do pull it off of basically just, anywhere where it's pulling a little too heavily. I think that seems kind of straightforward. Basically here, we're just really kind of quickly laying this out. And if you do run out, well, then you just simply follow your similar procedures as before and then begin applying more onto the model surface. Again, like I said, it's a fairly generous amount. You can see it's pooling into the recesses, but it is not tinting the main armor or anything like that too heavily. If we had used undiluted, it would have changed the values quite a bit. We're going to jump back to some Basilicum Gray after this is thoroughly dried. We're switching over to a detail brush here. And just for giggles, we are going to put in some kind of camo lines. I only apply like 1 layer. I could have also switched over to a darker color like, Black Templar or even a green for that matter. It really doesn't matter. It's just to illustrate, obviously we can create little camo patterns fairly easily on these surfaces. When working with contrast paints, bear in mind that it is better to start off with the color in a light, thinned out fashion and then slowly build up to your desired results rather than trying to accomplish it all in one go, and you end up kind of struggling back and forth to get the desired end result. And really the beauty of contrast is that it is like a base coat and a shade wash all in one for you, so you really do not need to work too heavily to achieve your desired results. Again, with just one thin wash, you can see we've already picked out quite a bit of the recesses and the details and all that. And so with this quick little layering here, I'm just putting in a slightly darker gray and just, picking odd shapes and just kind of laying them on. Nothing too complex. It's really just kind of more or less like one line here and there. We're going to use a Longbeard Gray, Citadel Dry, or any kind of really light gray. It's an off-white, essentially. We're going to use a medium dry brush. Make sure you've pulled off a lot of the paint out of the bristles. And very gently, you begin dry brushing the surface. And be mindful of the direction in which you pull the brush, as it will, catch those edges and corners. So most surfaces, basically the rule of thumb is to brush against the grain. So if lines on details run, north-south, then your brush stroke should be east-west and vice versa. Next, we're going to jump over to some lead Belcher. Let's slap that onto the palette. Just the dampness of the brush, really. It's a fair amount of water, really, in the brush, but that's fine. Just a little dollop of paint, and this is going to be for the gun barrels and also the little doodads in the ankle joint, as well as the couplings in the hips as well. So we're going to get these 3 little guns. I assume they're guns. I don't know. It's been a long time since I played around with Battletech. And of course, I also hit the area on the gun that has like the little, the little dimples in it. I guess it's kind of like a heat sink or whatever it is. I have no idea. And I also left that one little ring on the long gun in the middle bare of color, because basically we're going to come in with some Flesh Terror's red Citadel Contrast. And really quickly, we're just going to pick out a couple of areas here. I'm going to catch the end of the aerial. And basically that is just going to be, one coat and kind of done kind of thing. I'm letting the contrast paint do its thing. And on that ring on the gun barrel, I also lay a little bit down. I had considered giving this a highlight, but I figured contrast is fine. Again, when dealing with really small scale like this, I had considered kind of easing up on the severe amounts of contrast on the model, because, you really wouldn't see that at a vast distance, but, whatever. Null oil, this is the regular matte variety. This is the kind of the default shade wash. As I do not want the metal to be overly shiny. I want it to have a bit of that metallic luster, but I don't want it to be too shiny. Even though it is lead Belcher and it is the darker of the Citadel metallics, I'm just not looking for it to be that bright and silver. And so just a quick little Nuln Oil on the surfaces, and also the hip joins and the ankle joins as well. And here you can see I'm being fairly generous as I applied so that it pulls up in all those little nooks and crannies. Here's the little couplings in the hip joins. Just really quickly there, just kind of re-pick that out. Again, this is not entirely necessary, as these are just really small little details. And of course, the sculpts of the models as well. Also, I didn't even mention I cleaned this model up, knocked some of the mold lines down. It really wasn't too bad. But also, this was given a prime of Gray Sear Citadel spray. That's why you can probably see like a thumbprint on the base. Black Templar is next. This is going to be for the windows of the cockpit. And I switched over to detail brush, and here I'm basically laying the color down, pushing the color up to the highest point on each of the little windows so that it kind of gives us a bit of that transparency vibe. If anybody's been following this channel for a while, when we do like gemstones and things of that nature, oftentimes to create that illusion of transparency, we build the color darkest up to its highest point and allow a bit of a color gradient to persist at the bottom portion, and that gives the illusion of transparency. And so with this, you can see here how it's a little darker at the top and a little lighter at the bottom. Steel Legion Drab is next. We're going to slap a little bit onto our palette, and basically with our nice big brush here, we're just going to scrub this paint on carefully, of course, but otherwise this is going to be pretty straightforward. We're getting to the end of the model here, and so we do want to base the model, and of course it's your choice of colors or whatever you want to do here. Just for this example, I'm using some Steel Legion Drab. Again, it's a fairly common color, and I do apply 2 layers onto this base surface, just for the rim, as well as kind of just even out that whole look on the top of the base. I'm going to use Armageddon Dust from Citadel. This is a technical, and I'm also using their little technical texture brush to apply this. So basically I just spatula on this little daub of this basically it's like an acrylic paste with this pumice in it. And basically with this is to create a slight texture. I don't want an overly sandy like texture, and in fact I was debated whether or not to even texture it, because again, it's a question of scale, and so I figured this should be fine, but I patted it down fairly close to the base, so it's actually it's really only that 1 dollop of the technical that I applied to this base, because I was just going to smush it around and just provide a slight texture to the base. Again, this is more of a concern about scale and not so much how to do it. I mean, for anybody else out there, you slap on as much as you want on there or what have you. Here I'm just simply cleaning up some of the portions, and I'm just going to flatten out some of those areas just so it doesn't look too deliberate that it's, some sort of crazy technical that we're using on here. But otherwise, that is that. We'll set that aside, allow it to dry, and we're going to come back in with some Steel Legion Drab. I'm going to apply a somewhat generous amount of water to this, as I don't really want it to be overly saturated. And here I'm just going to clean up the rim of the base. As you can see, some of the previous technical drip down and what have you made marks along the rim, and I want to clean that up just so slightly. And the reason for using a thinned out paint in this regard is so that it's not leaving very, very heavy brush strokes, but I just want to get rid of some of that Armageddon Dust color off the rim. And so that's the whole reason for using it in a thinned out fashion like this. It's not, it's just so it's a little bit smoother looking. It's not so, see heavy brush strokes and looks like it's caked right on. But that is it. That is painting a Battletech miniature using Citadel. Stay tuned, as we'll have more looks at other ways of painting these models. They're pretty fun, and so far I'm enjoying it. A big thank you to my patrons. Without their support, these videos would not be possible. If you're considering Patreon support, click the link in the description below. You'll be taken off to a magical website called Patreon, where there are varying tiers of support, and a huge thank you to everybody who does. Take care of those brushes, and they will take care of you.